I slide the steel drawer open, and the body rolls into the light with that familiar metallic whisper I've heard 10,000 times before. But tonight, my hands are shaking. Tonight, the fluorescent hum above me sounds like a scream held back by glass. The woman on the table is 68 years old according to the preliminary report. Blunt force trauma, multiple contusions, signs of prolonged assault before death. I should be reaching for my instruments. I should be dictating initial observations into the recorder clipped to my lapel. Instead, I'm staring at her face, and the scalpel on my hand feels like it weighs 1,000 pounds. Because I know this face. I know the shape of that jaw. I know the exact angle where her left eyebrow arches slightly higher than the right. I know the small scar near her hairline from a fall she took when she was 12 years old, a story she told me once when I was 4, maybe 5, before she walked out of our apartment and never came back. The tag on her toe reads Jane Doe, unidentified, but I identified her the moment the sheet came down. This is Eleanor Webb. This is my mother, and she's been dead for approximately 9 hours. The morgue is doing the thing it does when the building settles. Little creaks, distant thuds from the ventilation system, the kind of sounds that become white noise after 3 decades of working in this basement. Except tonight, they sound like footsteps approaching from the long corridor behind me. I turn. Nothing. Just empty steel tables stretching back into shadow, and the red exit sign at the far end throwing its weak light across the tile. I look back at her face. Her eyes are closed. They're always closed when they arrive. But there's something about the way her mouth sits, slightly parted, as if she's about to speak. As if she's been waiting 53 years to tell me something, and now, finally, here we are. Alone. In the one place I thought I was safe from the past. I need to breathe. I need to step back and think clearly. But my legs won't move, and somewhere behind me, I hear it. A sound so faint I might be imagining it. The whisper of fabric against metal, like someone shifting their weight on one of the other tables. I don't turn around this time, because if I turn around and there's nothing there, I'll know I'm losing my mind. And if I turn around and there is something there, I'll know something worse. Listen, I don't ask for much, but if you're watching this, if you've made it this far into the dark with me, do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button, not because I need the numbers, because I need to know someone else is bearing witness to this. I need to know I'm not alone down here in this cold room with a woman who should have been buried as a stranger with a past I spent half a century trying to forget. Just click it. Stay with me, please. The sound doesn't come again. I force myself to look at the report clipped to the edge of the table. Female, approximately 65 to 70 years of age. Found in alley behind Morrison Street apartments. Significant facial trauma. Defensive wounds on forearms. Possible domestic violence. No identification. No witnesses. The detective's handwriting is careless, slanted, rushed. He probably has 4 other cases on his desk. To him, this is just another late-night call, another body, another Jane Doe will get processed and filed away in the city's vast catalog of forgotten people. But she had a name once. She had a son. She had a life before this table. And now her life ends where mine has been spent, under fluorescent lights that turn skin the color of old wax, in a room that smells like chemicals and cold metal and something else, something underneath it all that I've never been able to name. The smell of interruption, of stories cut short, of things left unfinished. I pick up the scalpel again. My hands have stopped shaking. That's the thing about this work. The body takes over when the mind can't. 43 years of routine, and my fingers know what to do even when my brain is screaming at me to run. Because here's what I haven't told you yet. Here's the part that's sitting in my chest like a stone. The last time I saw my mother, I was 7 years old. She walked out a Tuesday morning while I was at school, and she never came back. No note, no goodbye, just gone. And for 53 years, I've carried that absence like a second skeleton inside my own. I became a medical examiner because I wanted answers. I wanted to understand how bodies fail, how life ends, how the machinery of existence breaks down. I thought if I could explain death, maybe I could explain disappearance. Maybe I could explain her. And now she's here, on my table, in my morgue, dead by violence in an alley, alone, unidentified, with no one to claim her but me, and I'm not supposed to claim her, because the moment I do, I'm compromised. The moment I admit I know her, this case gets transferred. Someone else cuts her open. Someone else catalogs her injuries. Someone else closes the file. And I'll never know what she carried inside her. I'll never know what killed her beyond the obvious. I'll never know if there's something in her body that might tell me why she left, where she went, what happened in all those decades between the last time she kissed me goodnight and this moment, right now, with her skin cold under my gloved fingers. The drawer I pulled her from is still open behind me. It's creating a draft, I think. That's what I tell myself. That's why the air suddenly feels different. That's why I feel like someone just walked past me even though I'm alone. That's why the back of my neck is prickling with the sensation of being watched. I reach for the recorder, press the button. My voice comes out steady, professional, detached. This is Dr. Marcus Webb. Case number 4479-B, preliminary external examination of unidentified female, estimated age 65 to 70. Proceeding with standard autopsy protocol. But my hand is hovering over her chest, over the place where I'll make the first incision, and I can't move. Because once I cut, there's no going back. Once I open her up, I'm complicit in the final violation. The final theft of whatever privacy death was supposed to give her. And somewhere in the building, a door slams. Not the soft pneumatic hiss of the morgue doors. A real slam. The kind that sounds like anger. Like someone wants me to know they're here. I wait for footsteps. For voices. For the security guard doing his rounds. But there's nothing. Just that hum from the lights above me, rising and falling like breathing. I look at her face one more time. And I swear, something in her expression has changed. The morgue wasn't always mine. When I started here in 1982, it belonged to Dr. Raymond Kessler, a man who'd been cutting open bodies since before I was born. He had a way of moving through the space like he was underwater, slow and deliberate, never wasting emotion. He taught me everything. How to read lividity patterns. How to distinguish between ante-mortem and post-mortem wounds. How to dictate findings so clearly that a jury could understand them without seeing the photographs. But the most important thing he taught me was this: never let them become people again. The moment you start thinking about who they were, he told me during my first week, you're finished. They're not mothers or fathers or daughters or sons down here. They're cases. They're evidence. They're biological puzzles that need solving. You keep that distance, or this work will destroy you. I tried. God knows I tried. But the morgue has a way of collecting ghosts even when you don't believe in them. Not the supernatural kind. The other kind. The memories that attach themselves to stainless steel and tile. The faces you can't forget even when you've forgotten your own anniversary. The sounds that echo long after the bodies are gone. The crack of ribs during a chest examination. The wet slide of organs into the scale. The final hiss of the body bag zipper closing for the last time. I've performed approximately 11,000 autopsies in my career. 11,000 people who ended up on my table for reasons ranging from natural causes to acts of unthinkable violence. 11,000 stories that stopped mid-sentence. And in all those years, I maintained Dr. Kessler's sacred distance. I stayed professional. I stayed detached. I stayed sane. Until tonight. The morgue is on the basement level of the county medical building. No windows. No natural light. Just long corridors of white tile and steel doors with small glass panels that reveal nothing but darkness when you look through them. The main autopsy suite is at the far end, a large rectangular room with 6 tables, though we rarely use more than 2 at once. There's a wall of refrigerated drawers on the left, each one numbered and labeled with temporary tags. A bank of sinks and counters on the right, lined with instruments and specimen jars and chemical bottles that gleam under the lights like something out of an old pharmacy. And in the center, the tables themselves. Steel. Always cold. Always waiting. I've worked alone down here more nights than I can count. Budget cuts. Staff shortages. The usual slow decay of public institutions. Most of the time, it doesn't bother me. I prefer the solitude. No one asking questions. No one looking over my shoulder. Just me and the work and the radio playing low in the corner. Classical music usually, something without words to distract me. But tonight, I turned the radio off. I don't know why. Force of habit, maybe. Or maybe some part of me knew this wasn't going to be a normal examination. Maybe I wanted to hear every sound. Every whisper of air through the vents. Every distant thud from the floors above. The body arrived at 11:15. I was already here, finishing up paperwork from an earlier case, a suicide, straightforward, no complications. The transport team wheeled her in without ceremony. They never do. To them, it's just another delivery. They transferred her to my table, handed me the preliminary report, and left without a word. The door hissed shut behind them, and I was alone with her. I didn't look at first. I pulled up the digital file on my computer, cross-referencing the case number, making sure everything was logged correctly. Standard procedure. But then I had to look. I had to pull back the sheet and begin the external examination. And that's when I saw her face. That's when everything stopped. You have to understand something about memory. It's not a photograph. It's not a perfect recording. It's reconstructive. Every time you remember something, you're essentially rebuilding it from fragments, and those fragments get corrupted over time. Faces blur. Details merge. You start to doubt what you actually remember versus what you've convinced yourself you remember. But I remember her face. I remember it because I drew it. Over and over. After she left, when I was 8, 9, 10 years old, I would sit at the kitchen table while my father worked late shifts, and I would try to draw her from memory. I had exactly 3 photographs of her, 3 small squares of faded color that showed a young woman with dark hair and a careful smile, always looking slightly away from the camera as if she was already thinking about leaving. And I would study those photographs until they burned into my mind, and then I would try to recreate her on paper. I was never good at it. The eyes were never quite right. The proportions were always off. But I kept trying, kept drawing, kept trying to understand what I'd lost by mapping its contours with cheap pencils and notebook paper. And then I gave up. Somewhere around age 13, I stopped drawing. I put the photographs in a box. I told myself she was gone, and that was that. No use dwelling. No use wondering. Move forward. Survive. I became good at moving forward. I excelled in school. I went to college. I went to medical school. I chose pathology because it was clean and logical and didn't require me to develop bedside manner. I chose medical examination because I wanted to help people even if they were already dead. I wanted to give answers to the families left behind. I wanted to be the person who could look at tragedy and extract meaning. And maybe, Somewhere deep down where I didn't want to look, I thought that if I studied enough bodies, if I learned every possible way a human being could die, I might eventually find her. I might get a Jane Doe on my table one day who would turn out to be the woman who left me. And I'd finally understand. Careful what you wish for. She's approximately 5 feet 4 inches tall. Weighed probably around 130 before the injuries, though the body has lost fluid. Severe facial trauma, multiple contusions, fractured zygomatic bone, orbital blowout on the left side. Her nose is broken in 2 places. There's significant swelling that distorts her features, but underneath it, I can still see her. The shape is there. The underlying architecture. I take measurements. I photograph everything. I document each injury with clinical precision because that's what I'm trained to do. But my mind is somewhere else. My mind is in a small apartment on the east side of the city, circa 1972, watching a woman pack a single suitcase while her son is at school. Did she know she wasn't coming back? Did she plan it? Or did something happen that day, some final straw that broke her, and she just walked? The defensive wounds on her forearms suggest she fought back. Multiple abrasions, contusions, possible fractures. She raised her hands to protect herself. She tried to block the blows. But there were too many. The force was too great. Eventually, she went down. Eventually, she stopped moving. I need to examine her hands. I lift the right one carefully. The fingers are stiff with rigor mortis. There's bruising across the knuckles, impact trauma. But there's something else. Something that makes me pause and look closer. Under her nails, there's tissue. Blood and skin cells from whoever did this to her. She scratched them. She marked them. Even in her final moments, she fought. I collect samples. Slide them into evidence bags. Label everything. This is evidence now. This is the trail that might lead to whoever killed her. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a voice I don't recognize whispers, unless you don't want it to lead anywhere. I ignore the voice. I ignore the way the temperature in the room seems to have dropped. I ignore the faint smell that isn't formalin or decay but something else, something that reminds me of the perfume she used to wear, floral and cheap, bought from the drugstore counter. I ignore the pressure in my chest that feels like something breaking. I move to her left hand, and that's when I see it. On her ring finger, there's a tan line, faint but visible, the mark of a ring worn for decades and recently removed. Not by her. The finger's too swollen, the skin too damaged. Someone took it off after death, or during the assault. Either way, it's gone now, but I remember that ring. It was gold, thin band, no stone, just a simple loop that caught the light when she moved her hands. My father gave it to her when they got married. I remember him telling me that once, years after she left, when he was drunk in maudlin and couldn't stop talking about her even though he'd spent most of my childhood pretending she never existed. She took everything with her, he said, but at least she left the ring behind. At least I got that back. Except she didn't leave it behind. She was wearing it when she disappeared, which means my father lied, or misremembered, or never looked closely enough. And now it's gone again. I document the tan line. I photograph it from multiple angles. I make a note in the record, possible robbery, personal effects missing, but I don't believe it, because whoever did this to her didn't just kill her. They knew her. They were close enough to take something personal, close enough to remove a ring from a swollen finger while she bled out in an alley. I step back from the table. I need air. I need space. But there is no space in the morgue. There's just the walls closing in and the lights overhead and the overwhelming sense that I'm not alone down here. I turn around slowly. The room is empty. 6 tables, 5 of them vacant, only the one behind me occupied. No shadows moving in the corners. No figures standing in the doorway. Just empty space and cold air and the persistent hum of the ventilation system. But I feel it. That pressure. That presence. Like someone standing just outside my field of vision, watching, waiting for me to finish what I started. I turn back to her body. I need to know. I say out loud. My voice sounds strange in the empty room. Too loud. Too raw. I need to know why you left. She doesn't answer. Of course she doesn't. Dead bodies don't speak. Dead bodies don't explain. They just lie there and wait for someone like me to cut them open and catalog their failures. I reach for the scalpel, and every light in the morgue goes out. Darkness. Complete. Total. The kind that presses against your eyes like a physical weight. I don't move. Training kicks in before panic does. Power outages happen. The building is old. The wiring is older. This is not supernatural. This is infrastructure failure. This is a blown circuit or a trip breaker or any of a dozen mundane explanations. But my hand is still gripping the scalpel, and I'm standing in the dark next to my mother's body, and every rational explanation in the world doesn't change the fact that my heart is trying to break through my ribs. I count to 10. Slowly. Breathing in through my nose, out through my mouth. This is what Dr. Kessler taught me when I had my first panic attack during a particularly difficult examination. Count and breathe. The body doesn't lie, but the mind does. Your mind is telling you something is wrong. Your body knows better. Except right now, my body is screaming at me to run. The emergency lights should have kicked in by now. Every public building has them. Battery powered. Automatic. They should be flooding the hallway with that dim red glow that makes everything look like an old photograph. But there's nothing. Just darkness so complete I can't even see my own hand in front of my face. I take a step backward. Away from the table. Away from her. My hip bumps against the counter behind me, and something falls. Glass shatters on the tile. The sound is enormous in the silence. Sharp. Final. Like a period at the end of a sentence. And then I hear it. Breathing. Not mine. Someone else's. Slow and steady and coming from somewhere to my left. Near the wall of refrigerated drawers. Who's there? My voice cracks. I hate that it cracks. Identify yourself. The breathing continues. In. Out. In. Out. Rhythmic. Calm. Like whoever it is has been standing there the entire time, waiting for the lights to go out so I could finally hear them. I edge along the counter, feeling my way. My fingers brush against metal instruments. A tray. The edge of the sink. I'm trying to reach the door. If I can get to the hallway, if I can get to the stairs, I can. The lights come back on. All at once. Bright. Blinding. I squint against the sudden glare, my free hand coming up to shield my eyes. The morgue is exactly as I left it. Empty. No one by the drawers. No one in the doorway. Just me and the tables and her body lying exactly where it was. The broken glass at my feet is from a specimen jar. Clear liquid spraying across the tile. Probably formalin. I'll need to clean that up. Hazard protocol. Document the spill. But first, I need to check the hallway. I move quickly, scalpel still in hand because I forgot I was holding it. The door opens with its usual pneumatic hiss. The corridor beyond is lit and empty. Long stretch of white tile leading back to the elevator and the stairs. The exit sign glowing red at the far end. No one. I step back into the autopsy suite and close the door. Lock it. Not because locks mean anything, but because the ritual of it steadies my hands. I'm alone. I've always been alone down here. The breathing was the ventilation system. The darkness was electrical failure. Everything has an explanation. Everything is fine. I turn back to the table. Her head is turned. Not much. Just a few degrees. But enough that she's no longer looking straight up at the ceiling. Now she's looking toward me. Eyes still closed. Mouth still slightly open. But the angle is wrong. The position has changed. Rigor mortis doesn't work like that. Bodies don't move on their own. Not after they've been positioned. Not after they've been lying still for hours. I approach slowly, every instinct screaming at me to leave, to walk out, to call someone, to admit that I know who she is and get this case transferred to someone who isn't losing their mind. But I don't leave, because I need to know if I'm crazy or if something is actually happening. I need to know if this is grief doing something to my perception or if the rules of reality have fundamentally broken in this room. I reach out, touch her shoulder gently. The skin is cold and firm, normal for a body in this state. I apply slight pressure, testing the resistance. Everything feels right. Everything feels dead. I move her head back to center. Position it carefully. Check the neck for any signs of manipulation. Nothing. No one touched her. No one could have touched her. I was only gone for 30 seconds. I step back. Her head stays where I put it. I watch for a full minute, counting seconds, waiting for movement. But there's nothing. Just a dead woman on a steel table under fluorescent lights in the basement of a government building. I'm exhausted. That's what this is. I've been working too many hours. I've been down here too many nights. And now I'm confronted with a case that should never have come to me, and my mind is creating drama where there is none. I need to finish the examination. I need to do my job. And then I need to go home and sleep and decide what to do about the fact that my mother is lying dead in my morgue. I pick up the scalpel again. This time, I don't hesitate. The first incision runs from shoulder to shoulder, meeting at the sternum. The second runs straight down to the pubis. Y-shaped. Standard. The blade parts skin and subcutaneous tissue with practiced ease. Muscle and fascia separate. Bone appears beneath. I'm good at this part. The mechanical part. The part where the body becomes an object to be disassembled and studied. This is where Dr. Kessler's training takes over completely. This is where I stop being Marcus and become simply the examiner. I peel back skin and muscle, expose the rib cage, reach for the shears. The sound of breaking ribs is something you never get used to. Each one cracks with a wet pop that echoes off the walls. I work methodically. Left side, right side. Clip the cartilage. Remove the chest plate. Her organs are revealed. Heart, lungs, liver, everything in its proper place. Everything seemingly intact despite the massive trauma to her exterior. I begin the examination, weighing, measuring, sectioning, looking for internal bleeding, looking for signs of disease or damage that might have contributed to death beyond the obvious. Her heart is slightly enlarged, consistent with her age and probable hypertension. Her lungs show some scarring. Smoker, most likely, or long-term exposure to poor air quality. Her liver is damaged. Significant scarring. Cirrhosis. Advanced stage. She was dying anyway. Maybe not immediately. Maybe she had months or even years left. But her body was failing. The violence that killed her just accelerated the inevitable. I don't know why that makes me angry, but it does. She should have had those months, those years. She should have died in a hospital bed with pain medication and someone holding her hand. She should have died knowing that someone cared. Instead, she died alone in an alley, beaten to death by someone who took her ring and left her body to be found by strangers who cataloged her as Jane Doe and sent her to me. I remove her heart, place it on the scale, 420 grams, within normal range. I section it, examine the chambers, the valves, everything functional, nothing that would have killed her on its own. I move to the lungs. They're heavy, waterlogged, pulmonary edema, consistent with the chest trauma. Broken ribs punctured the pleural cavity. She drowned in her own blood. It would have taken time, minutes, maybe longer, lying there in the alley, feeling her chest fill, feeling her breath become impossible, knowing she was dying and no one was coming. Did she think of me? In those final minutes, did she remember the son she left behind? Did she wonder if I ever forgave her? Did she regret anything? Or was that just a footnote in a life I knew nothing about? I'm not being professional anymore. I'm not maintaining distance. But I can't stop. I need to see everything. I need to know everything about her that I can learn from her body, since I'll never be able to ask her the questions that have lived in my chest for 53 years. I examine her stomach. Empty. She hadn't eaten in at least 12 hours before death. I examine her intestines. Normal. I examine her kidneys. Damaged from the cirrhosis but functional. I examine her reproductive organs. Signs of old surgical scarring. Hysterectomy at some point in her past. No other children. No pregnancies after me. That's something, I suppose. I wasn't replaced. I was just abandoned. I'm crying now, not sobbing, just tears running down my face behind my safety goggles. I don't stop working. I can't stop. If I stop, I'll fall apart completely. I remove her brain, open the skull with a saw. The high-pitched whine fills the room. Bone dust in the air. I peel back the dura, extract the brain carefully, hold it in my hands. This is where she was. This is where her memories lived, where her decisions were made, where the thought occurred to leave her 7-year-old son alone and never look back. There's no trauma here, no bleeding, no damage beyond what you'd expect from impact transmitted through the skull. Her brain was fine. Her consciousness was intact until the very end. She knew what was happening to her. She was awake and aware while someone beat her to death. I place her brain on the scale, 1,100 grams, slightly below average. I section it, examine the tissue, look for disease, for abnormality, for anything that might explain her. But there's nothing, just a normal brain from a normal woman who made inexplicable choices. I'm almost finished. Just a few more samples, a few more measurements, and then I'll have to sew her back up and write my report and make a decision about what happens next. That's when I notice the paper. It's tucked into her clothing. The personal effects that came with the body are in a bag on the side table. Not much, just torn jeans and a stained shirt and worn sneakers, but this is something else. A small folded piece of paper caught in the waistband of her jeans. Hidden. Deliberate. I set down the instruments and reach for it. The paper is old. Yellowed. Soft from being folded and unfolded many times. I unfold it carefully. It's a drawing. Crude. Done in child's crayon. A stick figure woman with dark scribbled hair and a smile. Next to her, a smaller stick figure with the same dark hair. The background is blue sky and yellow sun and green grass. In the bottom corner, written in careful block letters, Marcus age 6. I made this for her, for Mother's Day. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my box of crayons, trying so hard to make it perfect, trying to capture her smile, trying to show her how much I loved her. She kept it. For 53 years, through whatever life she lived, whatever roads she walked, she kept this drawing. She didn't forget me. She didn't stop thinking about me. She just never came back. The paper shakes in my hands. I can't breathe, can't think. The room is spinning and nothing makes sense anymore because why would she keep this? Why would she carry this with her every day if she didn't care? Unless she cared and left anyway. Unless loving me wasn't enough. Unless I wasn't enough. I fold the paper carefully and put it in my pocket. This doesn't go in evidence. This doesn't go in the file. This is mine. The only thing she left behind that proves I mattered. I look at her body, opened and examined and cataloged. Every secret revealed except the one that matters. Why? I ask out loud. My voice breaks on the word. Why did you leave? The morgue is silent. I start closing her up, suturing carefully, making everything neat. It doesn't matter. No one will see this work. She has no family to view her, no one to claim her. She'll be cremated and filed away and forgotten by everyone but me. But I make it neat anyway, because it's the last thing I can do for her. I'm almost finished when I hear footsteps in the hallway outside. Real ones this time. Heavy boots. The security guard doing his rounds. The door opens. Frank pokes his head in. He's 60, overweight, always smells like coffee and cigarettes. You're here late. Document. Yeah. Busy night. He glances at the table. At her body. Shows no recognition because why would he? She's just another Jane Doe to him. You doing okay? Looked like the power flickered earlier. Just for a second. Everything's fine. He nods. All right. I'll be upstairs if you need anything. Don't stay too late. The door closes. His footsteps recede. I'm alone again. I finish the final sutures. Clean everything. Remove my gloves and gown. Strip off the protective gear. Stand there in my scrubs looking at the body that was my mother. I should call someone. I should report this. But who do I call? What do I say? That I just performed an unsanctioned autopsy on my own mother? That I contaminated a murder investigation by touching evidence? That I kept a piece of paper that might be relevant to the case? I'm destroyed either way. If I report it, I lose my license. If I don't report it, I live with this secret forever. I choose the secret. I write up the report. Jane Doe. Cause of death. Blunt force trauma resulting in massive internal bleeding and pulmonary edema. Manner of death. Homicide. I include all findings. I log all evidence. I document everything exactly as I should. I just leave out the part where I knew her. The body goes back in the drawer. I slide it closed. The metal whispers. The latch clicks into place. I clean the suite. Mop up the spilled formalin. Put away the instruments. Turn off the lights. The elevator carries me up to ground level. I sign out. Walk to my car in the parking garage. Drive home through empty streets. It's 4 a.m. The city is asleep. I should be too. But I know I won't sleep tonight. Maybe not ever again. Because I finally found her. And now I have to figure out how to let her go. The apartment is exactly as I left it 12 hours ago. Small. Efficient. No personality to speak of. Just furniture and appliances and white walls that I've never bothered to decorate. I've lived here for 8 years, but it still feels temporary. Like I'm waiting for real life to start. I pour whiskey. Sit at the kitchen table. Pull out the drawing. The paper is so old it's almost transparent. The crayon has faded but not disappeared. I can still see every line, every careful stroke. The love in it is obvious even after all these years. I was 6 when I made this. 1 year before she left. Was she already thinking about it then? When she hung this on the refrigerator with a magnet and told me it was beautiful, was she already planning her escape? Or did something happen in the year between 6 and 7? Some final unbearable thing that broke her? I'll never know. I drink the whiskey. Pour another. The sun starts to rise outside my window. Pink and gold light creeping across the buildings. Another day beginning. Another rotation of the earth. Everything continuing as if nothing has changed. But everything has changed. I have questions I can't ask. A murder I can't investigate. A mother I can't mourn publicly because no one knew she was my mother. The DNA samples I collected will go into the system. They'll search for matches. They might find the killer. And when they do, someone will call the detective and tell him they have a break in the Jane Doe case. And the investigation will move forward without me. Unless I do something. The thought occurs suddenly. Dangerous. Unethical. Exactly the kind of thing that would end my career if anyone found out. But I could. I could access the evidence. I could run the DNA myself. I could find out who killed her before the official channels do. And then, what? Confront them? Get justice for the woman who abandoned me? The woman who kept my drawing for 53 years. I look at it again. That crude happy family. The sun shining. Everything simple and good. I was 6. I didn't know anything yet. I didn't know about divorce or abandonment or the 1,000 ways people fail each other. I just knew I loved her and I wanted to make her smile. Did it work? Did she smile when I gave her this drawing? I can't remember. That memory is gone. Lost in the blur of childhood. All I have is the physical artifact. Proof that the moment happened, but not proof of what it meant. I fold it carefully and put it back in my pocket. Then I go to bed. Not because I think I'll sleep, but because lying down is what you're supposed to do. Going through the motions of normal life even when nothing is normal anymore. I close my eyes, and I hear breathing. The same breathing from the morgue. Slow, steady, close. I open my eyes. The bedroom is empty. Just shadows and furniture and the pink dawn light coming through the blinds. But I feel it. That presence. Like someone standing at the foot of my bed, watching me. I know you're not real, I say to the empty room. I know this is just stress and grief and my mind breaking down. The breathing continues. I get up, walk through the apartment, check every room, every closet, every space where someone could hide. Nothing. I'm alone. I've always been alone. I go back to bed, pull the covers up, close my eyes again. The breathing is still there, right next to me now, so close I should feel breath on my face. But there's nothing, just the sound. I lie there and listen to it until the sun is fully up and the city is awake and I have to get ready for another day at the morgue. Another day of cutting open bodies and looking for answers. Another day of pretending I'm fine. The morgue felt different the next time I walked in. Not physically. The lights still hung the same frequency. The temperature still hovered around 62 degrees. The smell was still formal and an industrial cleaner and something underneath that you learn not to name. But the space itself had shifted. Like a room you've lived in for years suddenly revealing that the walls were always slightly crooked and you just never noticed before. I had 2 cases scheduled, both routine. A 74-year-old man with suspected cardiac arrest. A 42-year-old woman found dead in her apartment, probable overdose. Neither of them would take long. Neither of them would challenge me. Just bodies failing in predictable ways. Just the usual work. But I couldn't stop thinking about drawer 47. That's where I put her. Row 4, middle section, number 7. Standard storage. Standard everything. Except nothing about this was standard. I'd submitted the samples, logged the evidence, filed the preliminary report. The detective would get it later today. He'd review my findings. He'd add them to his case file. And eventually, if we were lucky, someone would be arrested and tried and sentenced. Justice would be served. The system would work exactly as designed. But I'd be watching from the outside, unable to testify because the moment anyone discovered my connection, the case would fall apart. Defense attorneys would have a field day. Compromised examiner. Tainted evidence. Mistrial at best. Dismissal at worst. So I had to stay silent. Had to pretend she was just another Jane Doe. Just another victim in a city full of them. I started with the cardiac arrest. Elderly male. Overweight. History of hypertension and diabetes according to his medical records. Found dead in bed by his daughter. Straightforward. I opened him up. His heart was massive. Ventricles thick and struggling. Coronary arteries clogged with decades of plaque. This man's death had been inevitable. Not today specifically, but soon. His body had been failing for years. I documented everything. Took samples. Wrote my report. Cause of death, acute myocardial infarction. Manner of death, natural. The daughter would get closure. The insurance company would get their answer. Everyone could move on. Next case. The overdose. Young woman. Thin. Track marks on her arms. Found by her roommate surrounded by drug paraphernalia. Another inevitable death. Another body that had been failing slowly until it failed completely. I examined her. Needle marks. Liver damage. Heart damage. Lungs damaged. Every system compromised. The toxicology report would confirm what I already knew: opioids, probably fentanyl-laced heroin. She'd taken what she thought was a normal dose and it killed her within minutes. I documented, sampled, reported. Cause of death, acute drug intoxication. Manner of death, accidental. The roommate would blame themselves. The family would be devastated. Another tragedy in the endless parade of tragedies. I finished both examinations by noon. Cleaned up. Removed my protective gear. Stood in the empty suite looking at the wall of drawers. 48 of them in total. Currently 17 occupied. 17 bodies waiting for processing or release or cremation. 17 stories interrupted. And one of them was my mother. I walked over to row 4. Put my hand on drawer 47. The metal was cold. Always cold. I could open it. I could look at her again. I could check the sutures. Make sure everything was neat. But that would be unnecessary. The examination was complete. The case was logged. There was no medical reason to open that drawer again. I walked away. Back upstairs. To my office. Small room with a desk and a computer and filing cabinets full of case files. I sat down. Stared at the screen. Pulled up the pending cases. The detective had already accessed my report on Jane Doe 4479B. He added notes. No witnesses. No surveillance. Checking for similar assaults in area. Waiting on DNA results. The DNA results would take weeks. Budget cuts meant the lab was backed up. Hundreds of cases waiting for processing. Mine would go in the queue with all the others. And eventually, someone would run the samples. And eventually, the system would spit out a name or names. And eventually, maybe, there would be an arrest. But weeks felt like forever, and sitting here waiting felt impossible. I opened another window, typed in my credentials, accessed the evidence database, found the samples I collected from her body, the tissue under her fingernails, the blood, the fiber samples from her clothing. I could expedite this. I had the authority. I could mark it as priority and jump the queue, but that would raise questions. Why is this Jane Doe case more important than any other? What makes this one special? I couldn't answer those questions without revealing everything. So I closed the window, logged out, sat in my office staring at nothing. My phone buzzed. Text from Frank, the security guard. You left your thermos down here yesterday. Front desk. I'd forgotten I even brought a thermos. I'd forgotten most of yesterday beyond the central horror of it. I texted back. Thanks. I'll grab it. But I didn't move. Just sat there, looking at my hands. The same hands that had cut open my mother. The same hands that had held her heart, her lungs, her brain. The same hands that had sewn her back up and put her in a drawer. These hands had performed 11,000 autopsies. But yesterday was the first time they'd touched someone I'd loved. I left the office, took the elevator down, retrieved my thermos from Frank. You alright, Doc? You look rough. Long night. Yeah, I heard you were down there till 4. That's dedication. Just doing the job. He nodded. Didn't press. Frank was good like that. He'd worked security here for 20 years. He'd seen enough doctors burn out to recognize the signs. He knew when to ask questions and when to just let people be. I took my thermos, started walking back to the elevator, then stopped. The morgue entrance was right there, down the hallway, through 2 sets of doors, just 100 feet away. I could go back down. I could open drawer 47. I could, what? Talk to her? Ask her questions she couldn't answer? Demand explanations from a corpse? But I walked toward the doors anyway, because staying away felt wrong, because leaving her alone down there felt like abandonment, like what she did to me. The doors opened with their pneumatic hiss. The temperature dropped immediately. The smell hit me, familiar, nauseating, comforting. I've spent more time in this basement than anywhere else in my life. This is my real home. This is where I understand things. The main suite was empty. I'd cleaned everything, put everything away. Just empty tables and fluorescent lights and that ever-present hum. I walked to the wall of drawers. Row 4, number 7. I put my hand on the latch. What are you doing, Doc? I spun around. Frank was standing in the doorway. I forgot to check something. On yesterday's case. The Jane Doe? Yeah. He walked closer, looked at the drawer, looked at me. His expression was concerned but not suspicious. Not yet. You sure you're okay? You seem off. I'm fine. Because if you need to talk to someone, I'm fine, Frank. Really. Just tired. He nodded slowly. All right. But maybe go home. Get some rest. These bodies aren't going anywhere. He was right. They never did. That was the point of the drawers. Preservation. Waiting. The dead are patient. Yeah, I'll do that. I walked past him, back through the doors, back to the elevator, back up to the world of the living. But all I could think about was the dead. I didn't go home. I went to the archives. The county keeps records of every autopsy going back 70 years. Paper files before 2010. Digital after. Millions of cases. Millions of bodies. Everyone documented and stored and filed away. I accessed the system, typed in search parameters. Eleanor Webb, my mother's maiden name. I didn't know what name she'd been using when she died. The woman on my table had no identification. But before she was Jane Doe, she was Eleanor. And maybe, somewhere in these records, there was something. A previous arrest. A hospital visit. Something that would tell me where she'd been. What she'd done. Who she'd become. The system searched. Came back empty. I tried variations. Ellie Webb. Eleanor W. E. Webb. Nothing. She either stayed off the grid completely, or she'd changed her name, or she'd lived somewhere else for most of those 53 years. I expanded the search. County-wide, then statewide, then national databases that I had partial access to through my position. Still nothing. It's possible to disappear. Even now. Even with cameras and databases and digital footprints everywhere. It's possible to simply walk away and become someone else. You just have to be willing to leave everything behind. She was willing. I leaned back in my chair. The archive room was cold and quiet. Stacks of file boxes stretching back into shadow. The physical history of death in this county. Every story. Every ending. And none of them were hers. Because she'd spent her life making sure no one could find her. Until now. Until someone's fists found her in an alley and ended the decades of hiding. I closed the search windows. Cleared my history. Logged out. My phone rang. Unknown number. Dr. Webb. Doctor, this is Detective Morrison. I'm following up on case 4479B. The Jane Doe from yesterday. My stomach tightened. Yes, detective. I submitted my report this morning. I saw. Very thorough. I'm wondering if I can ask you a few follow-up questions. Of course. The defensive wounds you noted. The tissue under her nails. That's our best shot at getting DNA on whoever did this. Yes. I collected samples. They're logged in evidence. How long before we get results? Depends on the lab's backlog. Could be weeks. He swore under his breath. We don't have weeks. This woman was beaten to death. Whoever did this is still out there. I understand, detective. But the system, can you expedite it? I know you have some pull down there. I can mark it priority, but that only helps so much. The lab is severely understaffed. Do what you can, because right now, this is all we have. No witnesses, no surveillance in that area. Nothing but those DNA samples. I'll do my best. Appreciate it. Document. One more thing, you didn't notice anything unusual about the body? Anything that might help us identify her? I thought about the ring that was missing, the tan line, the drawing in her pocket that was now in my apartment. Nothing beyond what's in my report. All right. Thanks for your time. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone. I just lied to a police detective, withheld evidence in a murder investigation, both of which were felonies. But what choice did I have? Tell him I knew her? That I performed the autopsy anyway? That I kept a piece of evidence because it was mine? No, the secret was already cemented. Now I just had to live with it. I left the archives. Drove home. The afternoon sun was bright and harsh after the dim basement. The city looked different in daylight. Cleaner. More innocent. You couldn't see the shadows. But they were there. Always there. Just waiting for the light to change. My apartment was exactly as I'd left it. Unmade bed. Empty whiskey bottle on the counter. The drawing still in my coat pocket. I pulled it out. Looked at it again. That stick figure woman and stick figure boy. So simple. So happy. A child's version of love. I'd spent 53 years angry at her. 53 years building my life around her absence. Everything I'd become was a response to her leaving. My career, my solitude, my inability to form lasting relationships because I'd learned at 7 years old that the people you love most will walk away without explanation. But she kept the drawing. That had to mean something, didn't it? Unless she kept it as a reminder, a warning. This is what I walked away from. This is what I chose to leave behind. I didn't know. I'd never know. I put the drawing on the kitchen table, poured whiskey, sat down, and the breathing started again. Slow, steady, right behind me. I didn't turn around, because I knew there was nothing there. Because I knew this was just my mind fracturing under the weight of what I'd done. But the breathing didn't stop. It continued through the evening, through dinner, microwave food I didn't taste, through the news on TV, stories about violence and politics and everything wrong with the world, through my shower, through brushing my teeth, through lying down in bed and closing my eyes. Always there, always just behind me, like someone watching, waiting. I opened my eyes, looked at the ceiling. The shadows from the streetlight outside made patterns, branches moving in the wind, creating shapes that almost looked like fingers reaching. I'm sorry, I said to the darkness. I'm sorry I couldn't save you. I'm sorry I didn't know you needed saving. I'm sorry for whatever happened that made you leave. The breathing didn't change. And I'm sorry for being angry. For spending my whole life hating you when maybe you have reasons I'll never understand. Still nothing. Just the slow rhythm of inhalation and exhalation that wasn't real but wouldn't stop. I closed my eyes. Eventually, somehow, I slept. And I dreamed of the morgue. Of drawer 47 sliding open on its own. Of her body sitting up. Of her turning to face me with that impossible question. Why didn't you come looking for me? I woke up gasping. The bedroom was dark. The clock read 3:47 a.m. The breathing had stopped. But something else had started. Scratching. Soft. Rhythmic. Coming from the kitchen. I got up. Walked through the apartment. The scratching grew louder. It was coming from the table. From where I'd left the drawing. I turned on the light. The drawing was moving. Not dramatically. Just shifting. Like something underneath it was trying to push through. I stood there watching. Unable to move. Unable to look away. And then it stopped. The paper lay flat. Still. Innocent. I approached slowly. Touched it. The paper was warm. I picked it up. Underneath, scratched into the wood of my table, was a word. Help. I stared at it. At the fresh marks in the wood. At the impossible message. And I understood then that this wasn't over. That finding her body wasn't the end. That whatever had happened to her, whatever had driven her to leave, whatever had led to her death in that alley, it was still happening. And somehow, it had followed her to me, continuing with the full narrative structure to reach the requested length. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. I sat at the kitchen table staring at the words scratched into the wood. Help. For letters carved with something sharp. The grain of the wood split and torn. Fresh. Impossible. I touched the marks again. They were real. I wasn't imagining them. Something had been here. Something had done this while I slept. Or I'd done it myself. That thought was somehow worse. The idea that I'd gotten up in some dissociative state, found something sharp, and carved a message to myself. That my mind had fractured so completely that I was now creating evidence of hauntings to explain the grief I couldn't process. But I didn't remember doing it. And there was nothing sharp on the table. No knife, no keys, nothing that could have made those marks. I searched the apartment, checked every drawer, every surface, looking for whatever tool had been used. Nothing. The scratches remained, physical proof of something I couldn't explain. I made coffee, stood at the window watching the city wake up, watched the sun rise over buildings and streets, watched people emerge from their homes to begin another ordinary day. Commuters, joggers, someone walking their dog, all of them living normal lives where dead mothers stay dead and tables don't get carved with messages in the night. My phone buzzed. Text from work. 2 incoming cases. ETA 7 a.m. Both priority. I looked at the time. 5:32 a.m. I should shower, get dressed, go in, do my job, pretend everything was normal. Instead, I sat back down at the table, ran my fingers over the carved word again and again. Help. Help with what? What could I possibly do for a dead woman? What was she asking? Or was this about the murder? Was she trying to tell me something about who killed her? About why? I pulled up my phone, opened a browser, searched for her name again. Eleanor Webb. Cross-referenced with missing persons, with unsolved cases, with any mention in any database I could access. Still nothing. 53 years and she'd left no trail. No credit cards. No social media. No employment records that I could find. She either lived completely off the grid or used a different identity. But she'd been somewhere. She'd lived those decades. She'd aged. She'd developed cirrhosis. She'd kept my drawing. She'd existed in the world even if the world had no record of her. And then someone had beaten her to death and taken her ring and left her in an alley. Who? An ex-partner? A random assault? Someone she knew from whatever life she built? The tissue under her nails would tell us. Eventually, when the DNA came back, when the system finally processed the evidence and spit out a name. But that could take weeks. And I was supposed to just wait. Just go about my life. Just pretend I didn't have a personal stake in this. Except now I had a table carved with an impossible message. I took a photo of it, not for evidence, just to prove to myself it was real, that I wasn't losing my mind completely. Then I showered, got dressed, drove to work. The morgue was already active when I arrived. 2 transport teams unloading bodies. The priority cases. A double homicide from overnight. Gang-related shooting according to the preliminary reports. Young men, early 20s. Multiple gunshot wounds. Both dead at the scene. I suited up. Went through the routine. External examination. Photography. Documentation. Opening. Examination. Sample collection. Both cases were straightforward from a medical perspective. Cause of death, examination from multiple gunshot wounds. Manner of death, homicide. The bullets had torn through vital organs. Death would have been quick, but straightforward didn't mean easy. These men had been alive yesterday. They'd woken up, made choices, gotten into whatever situation led to them dying on a street corner. And now they were on my tables, reduced to evidence, to measurements and photographs and tissue samples. Their families would bury them, would grieve, would carry that loss for the rest of their lives. Like I was carrying mine. I finished the examinations, wrote my reports, cleaned up. It was almost noon. I hadn't eaten, hadn't thought about food, but I should maintain some semblance of routine. I went to the cafeteria. Hospital food, bland, institutional. I got a sandwich I wouldn't taste and coffee I didn't need. sat at a table in the corner, alone. My phone buzzed. Email notification from Detective Morrison. Subject, Jane Doe 4479B update. Dr. Webb. Quick update. We showed photos to local businesses near where the body was found. One shopkeeper thinks he might have seen her. Regular customer, apparently. Came in for cigarettes and lottery tickets. Always paid cash. Never gave a name. We're canvassing more businesses. Someone knew her. Someone talked to her. We're going to find out who she was, even if the DNA takes forever. Also, any luck expediting those samples? Detective Morrison. I stared at the email. They were going to identify her. Eventually. Through old-fashioned detective work. And when they did, they discovered she had a son, a medical examiner, who worked in the county morgue, and they want to know why I never reported it. I typed a response. Detective Morrison, I've flagged the samples as priority. Should move them up in the queue. We'll keep you posted on timeline. Dr. Webb. I hit send, deleted the email thread, cleared my inbox. Then I pulled up the employee directory, found the lab supervisor's extension, called. Lab, this is Chen. Dr. Chen, this is Marcus Webb from me. I have a case I need expedited. 4479B DNA samples from tissue recovered under victim's nails. Webb, you know the backlog we're dealing with. Everything's priority according to the detectives. I know, but this one, the victim was badly beaten, left to die. The detective is working it hard. Those samples are his only lead. Silence on the line. Then, all right, I'll see what I can do, but I can't promise anything. We're running at capacity. Anything helps. Thanks, Chen. I hung up. I was prioritizing my mother's case, using my position to move her to the front of the line. Another ethical violation to add to the growing list. But if the DNA came back faster, if they identified the killer faster, maybe the case would close before anyone discovered the connection. Maybe I could stay hidden in plain sight. Or maybe I was just delaying the inevitable. I finished my tasteless sandwich, threw away the trash, went back down to the basement. The morgue was quiet, empty. The double homicide cases had been processed and were in storage waiting for release to funeral homes. The other drawers held their usual occupants. Various stages of death and decay. Various stories stopped mid-sentence. And drawer 47. I walked over to it, put my hand on the cold metal. I'm trying, I whispered. I'm trying to help, but I don't know what you want from me. No response. Of course not. Dead bodies don't talk. Don't carve messages into tables. Don't breathe in empty rooms. All of that was just my mind breaking. My guilt manifesting. My grief creating impossible scenarios because the reality was too simple and too terrible. She was gone. She'd been gone for 53 years. And now she was gone forever. And I'd never know why. I pulled my hand away from the drawer, started to leave, then stopped, because I heard it again. That breathing, slow and steady and coming from behind me. I turned. The morgue was empty. 6 tables, all vacant. No one there. No one breathing. But the sound continued. I walked toward it, following the rhythm. It seemed to be coming from the far corner, near the storage cabinets where we kept supplies, chemicals, equipment. I approached slowly. The breathing got louder. I reached the corner. Nothing. Just cabinets. Just shelves. Just the usual inventory of death. But the breathing was right there, right next to me. like someone standing invisibly beside me, watching me search for them. "Who are you?" I asked the empty air. "What do you want?" The breathing stopped. Complete silence. Then, from behind me, from across the room, from the direction of the drawers, a bang. Metal on metal. Loud. Violent. I spun around. All the drawers were closed. Nothing had moved, but the sound echoed off the tile walls. Unmistakable. Undeniable. Someone, something, had slammed one of the drawers. I walked back across the room. My heart was pounding. My hands were shaking. This wasn't stress. This wasn't grief. This was something real. Something physical. I checked each drawer, pulled on the handles. They were all latched properly, all secure, except row 4, number 7. The latch was loose, not open, but not fully closed either, like someone had tried to open it from the inside and failed. I stared at it, at the drawer that held my mother's body, at the impossible possibility that she was somehow trying to reach me. "This isn't real," I said out loud. "Bodies don't move. Dead people don't communicate. This is just my mind creating patterns where there are none." The latch clicked. Fully closed now. Firmly secured. As if something inside had heard me and responded. I stumbled backward. Away from the drawers. Away from whatever was happening. My back hit one of the examination tables. The cold steel grounded me. Reminded me where I was. What was real. I forced myself to breathe. To think. To be rational. There were explanations. The building was old. The ventilation system created pressure changes. The drawers shifted sometimes. The latches were mechanical and imperfect. All of this could be explained by normal phenomena, but the word carved into my table, the breathing in my apartment, the sounds in this room, all of it together was too much. Too coordinated. Too focused. Something was trying to tell me something, and I was either going insane or I needed to listen. I left the morgue early that day. Told Frank I wasn't feeling well. He looked concerned but didn't pry. Just nodded and reminded me to get some rest. But rest wasn't possible. Not with that word carved into my table. Not with the sounds following me. Not with the growing certainty that I was either experiencing something impossible or losing my mind completely, and I didn't know which option was worse. I drove through the city aimlessly. No destination. Just movement. Trying to clear my head. Trying to make sense of what was happening. My mother had been dead for 3 days. In that time, I'd examined her body, found her daughter's drawing, lied to a detective, violated protocol, and now I was experiencing what could only be described as a haunting. Except I didn't believe in hauntings. I'd spent 43 years cutting open bodies. I'd seen what happens when life ends. The electrical activity stops. The cells begin to die. Decomposition starts immediately. There's no consciousness. No soul. No ghost. Just biology shutting down in predictable stages. But biology didn't explain the scratches in my table. I found myself driving toward the east side, toward Morrison Street, toward the alley where she'd been found. I parked a block away, walked. The afternoon was warm, bright, completely ordinary. People on the sidewalks, cars passing, storefronts open, life continuing as it always did. The alley was between 2 buildings, narrow, dark even in daylight, dumpsters and fire escapes. The kind of place people hurry past, the kind of place bad things happen. There was still police tape across the entrance, yellow and stark. Crime scene, do not cross. I stood at the edge, looking in, trying to imagine what had happened here. She'd been beaten, multiple impacts, someone's fists, maybe feet. The assault had gone on for a while. The number of injuries suggested sustained violence, not a quick attack. Had she screamed? Had anyone heard? Or had this happened late at night when the city was asleep and no one was listening? You're not supposed to be here. I turned. A uniformed officer was walking toward me. Young, probably fresh out of the academy. I'm Dr. Webb, county medical examiner. I performed the autopsy on the victim found here. He relaxed slightly. Oh, Detective Morrison's case? Yes. He's been here every day, talking to everyone, trying to find someone who saw something. He shook his head. But you know how it is. No one ever sees anything. Did anyone hear anything that night? If they did, they're not talking. This neighborhood, people mind their own business. I looked back at the alley, at the spot where she must have fallen, where she'd lain bleeding, drowning in her own blood, alone. Was there anything else recovered from this scene? Anything not in the official evidence? The officer frowned. Like what? I don't know. Personal effects. Anything that might help identify her. Just what came to you at the body. Some clothes. Nothing else. No ring. Whoever took it had kept it. Or sold it. Or thrown it away. Thanks, officer. I started to leave. Dr. Webb? I turned back. Morrison said you're good at your job. Said if anyone can find something useful, it's you. He paused. So, did you find anything? I thought about the drawing in my pocket, the word carved in my table, the breathing in my apartment. Nothing conclusive, I said, but I'm still looking.